I previously filmed a two-part series called Alcove Secrets Revealed that proved to be quite popular with other fitted furniture makers. I think it was popular for two reasons. One was that I was honest about mistakes and I showed you how I fixed them. And the other reason was that I talked about my systems for alcoves and how I've come up with a method to usually make them in the same way, just with add-ons and variations for a more traditional style. I thought this would be a good third part to that series because it's a bigger installation, it's got drawers in it, it's non-standard, and it's gone wrong again. And I know how much you like hearing about how I correct things that went wrong. So, what went wrong? I'll start with that. When I surveyed this space, there were some existing units, and we've kind of matched up to these to replace them. The units had to be replaced because of water damage, and it was an insurance paid for job. This is the original radiator cover slash window seat that was probably built at the same time. So you see the quality of the MDF there, where it's been routed on site and overpainted and poured joints and gaps and that sort of thing. So you compare that to the finish that we achieve, still MDF, but pre-finished in the workshop with a great deal more care. So I came in thinking, right, this is a bit non-standard. It's not the way I would want to build it, but I know I can wow the customer with the results. And she had a quote of over 10 grand for this from the kitchen company that she'd used. And I was able to near enough half that and be confident that it would be a reasonably good moneymaker. The problem was, when I surveyed it, the units were still there, and it was very deceptive, the genuine depth of the alcove. And without going into all the details, I got some details wrong in the survey drawing, but because part of my system is visit once, measure, design, price, and only return when you install, I stuck too rigidly to that and I should have rechecked it. The second part of the problem was that I delegated the final drawing up to someone else in the team, and he didn't know that usually I would send the customer the depths of shelves as a final check, but only the elevation drawings were sent. The customer said fine, assuming things were deeper, and stuff was built wrong. So I said I'll show you the problems. The shelf units we built at our standard depth, but they should have been about 10 centimetres deeper, and that's what the customer preferred. Similar with the base cabinets. What we've done is we've cut out the back panel. When we realised the customer had things she was relying on fitting in there, we've just removed the back panel, and I'm going to have to trim filler bits to cover those gaps. I had to do the same at the top because she keeps her Christmas decorations up there, and the boxes she's used to putting up there wouldn't have fitted. So there's a void behind these fairly shallow units, and I can use that depth by taking the back out. So not disastrous, but unfortunate really for me to have not quite given her what she wanted. And lucky for me actually that she didn't just pull the whole thing and want it all remade, but I am going to discount. The other issue was that the original design had the units coming further forward, which meant that they covered the ends of this bit of coving. Now the reason for that coving is that there's a false wall there for the TV bracket, which was already there. And that was part of my confusion on the survey. With all this furniture already here and that false wall, I got a mismeasure of the depth of the alcove. So that was the main mistake. So now on to the non-standard features. Now I mentioned that I wasn't particularly keen on having to build it non-standard, but I felt the job would be worthwhile. Now I say that because I've put a lot of time into the sort of systems that I talked about in the previous videos. So that system established over years of trial and error, established the width of the side scribes that we use, the way that they meet the chimney breast and the way that they meet the wall where they get scribed, and then the tolerances so that we just build rigid units, they always fit, the scribes always fit, that sort of thing. She wanted these extra wide scribes, and she also wanted to maximise storage. So for me, I prefer not to have scribes that overhang, because then you have books that are behind them and you can't just take them out. But for her, the amount of storage was a priority. So we compromised on that, but it brought in some difficulties in the construction. I'm not sure if I can show you here. This one's part built. You can't actually see it, so that's a pretty normal side, but on this side over here, in order to semi-standardise our method of fitting this sort of pre-assembled L section, we've got a doubled up side panel. I'll drop some photos in of it. Got a doubled up side panel in the unit. Not a big deal, but it all kind of slows down construction, and then it kind of confused me on site because I'm so used to just ploughing through a system and getting these things fitted in a day that everything was more stumbling along really on this one. But it has gone in okay. The other thing that I thought might interest you is the drawer. I've not shown an Alcove unit with drawers in. Our method for the drawers is, well, first of all, we're sizing them in the CAD in Sketchup, and we size the width of the drawer to assume that we can adjust the door gap to 2 millimeters. If you saw the previous video, we have a method of fitting the doors and then fitting the side strips to the doors, having adjusted the gaps with the Blum hinges so that we effectively fit the frame effect to the door rather than the other way round. And that's part of the system of being able to pre-finish the doors and not have to trim them or anything. We have occasionally, when we've got a drawer bridging across like that, we've occasionally sized it wrong, so it ends up over long or over short because it just didn't account properly for the middle gap of the doors. So we've got it correct on this one and it's all lined up. The method for fitting the frontage, if you're interested, is I would usually, when you've got two handles on a long drawer, I would usually position the centre of those handles on the quarter length mark of the door, if that makes sense, which means that the handles then end up centred above the doors below. And I then pre-drill, as you can see on this frontage, with a 4mm bit, and I use Craig screws, as you'll see in the photos I'm dropping in, Craig screws to hold it onto the drawer box, and I position it off the doors with a 3mm packer. So I can Craig screw it onto the drawer box, hold it in place, and then I can take one at a time, take the Craig screws out and swap them out for handle screws. So that's how I do it. That's what we're about to do here. We are almost finished on this project. I've only got that drawer front to fit, and then the next step is the wall scribe and then the plinth infill. And I'm expecting people watching this to criticise me in the same way that they criticised the previous job, where they said that it should have gone right up to the ceiling. This one looks better because it's further off the ceiling, but I'm expecting people to say, why haven't you got a skirting around there? And the reason is, like a lot of details on the job, the reason is my brief was pretty much to match up to the existing units, and they didn't have a skirting, so I didn't see the reason to volunteer for more work. Perhaps I should have done. I did, however, steer the customer towards certain decisions that I thought would improve the furniture, and to be frank, that also fitted a bit more with my system. So I have learnt over the years not to let the customer take the lead, because actually sometimes customers say, I want it like this, but they don't know what other options are available. And I feel I've given them a better flush fitted look that actually I prefer to fit that way compared to the doors they had, which were sort of sat over a face, which to me was a bit of an uglier, lazier way of fitting, which was probably just the way it was built. You sort of build everything in sight, you lay your doors over it, it's kind of quick. That was the construction method, I believe, of the previous builder. I think the only other thing I wanted to mention was the fluting. So you may not have seen many fluted jobs because again, on my channel because again, that's something that I try to avoid, to be honest, because I found it to be quite time consuming and it needs a lot of fine sanding to get the sort of finish that I think is acceptable. But we did it in this case and we priced okay for it. I don't know if I said I'm going to correct that overhanging coving there by removing it and replacing it with an OG moulding. I've discussed this with the customer. Replacing it with an OG moulding that will sit just within flush So I'll fit that up there, and it will cover that step that needs to be covered up there. So that was a quick run through of some other methods and some other mistakes. I hope you found it interesting, helpful. Do comment if you did. And if my content helps you, then do subscribe for more content about fitted furniture. And please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Freebird, because that helps me to keep spending the time sharing my knowledge with you. Thanks for watching.